June 16, 1944. In a dimly lit execution chamber in Columbia, South Carolina, a frail 14-year-old boy is strapped into the electric chair. He weighs only 90 pounds. The chair is built for men twice his size. His feet dangle above the ground. The oversized mask slips from his face. And in a matter of moments, George Stinney Jr. becomes the youngest person executed in the United States in the 20th century. His crime? The murder of 2 white girls. A crime for which there was no physical evidence, no credible witnesses, and no real defense. His trial lasted just 2 hours. The all-white jury deliberated for only 10 minutes before deciding his fate. This is not just the story of a boy, but the story of a system that failed him, a system designed to fail him. To understand the case of George Stinney Jr., we must first understand the world in which he lived. The year is 1944. The United States is in the midst of World War II, fighting for freedom and democracy overseas. But at home, in the Jim Crow South, Black Americans are denied the most basic rights. Segregation is the law. The courts are not places of justice, but instruments of control, where Black defendants stand trial in front of all white juries, defended by lawyers who do not defend them. Alcolu, South Carolina, a small mill town divided by race. The white families live on one side, the Black families on the other. There is no justice for Black people here. And in March of 1944, this town would become the setting for one of the greatest miscarriages of justice in American history. On March 23, 1944, 2 young white girls, Betty June Vinegar, 11, and Mary Emma Thames, 7, went missing while riding their bicycles. The next morning, their bodies were discovered in a shallow ditch, brutally beaten, a community search for answers. But in the Jim Crow South, suspicion always fell on Black boys. George Stinney Jr., just 14 years old, was arrested the same day. He and his younger sister had reportedly spoken to the girls earlier, and that was enough. There was no forensic investigation, no witness testimony, no time for doubt. Within hours, George was interrogated, alone, without a lawyer, without his parents. The police claimed he confessed. But no written record of this confession exists. 3 months later, George Stinney Jr. stood trial in the Clarendon County Courthouse. The trial lasted just 2 hours. His court-appointed lawyer was a local tax attorney with political aspirations. He called no witnesses, presented no evidence, and offered no real defense. The jury of 12 white men took only 10 minutes to deliberate before sentencing George to death. Outside, the streets of Alcolu buzzed with celebration. Justice, they believed, had been served. Inside, a terrified child sat alone, knowing that no one was coming to save him. The sun had barely risen when George Stinney Jr. was led into the execution chamber. He was 14 years old, too small for the straps, too young to understand the finality of what was about to happen. The guards placed a Bible on the seat to prop him up. They secured the electrodes. And then, at exactly 7:30 a.m., they pulled the switch. 4,000 volts of electricity surged through his small body. Witnesses say the oversized mask slipped from his face, revealing wide, frightened eyes. Within minutes, it was over. George Stinney Jr. was dead. His trial had lasted 2 hours. His life had ended in just 4 minutes. For decades, George Stinney's case remained a tragic footnote in history. But in 2014, 70 years after his execution, a South Carolina judge finally overturned his conviction. The ruling stated what many had long known. The trial was a sham, the evidence non-existent, the execution a grave injustice. But George Stinney Jr. was never given the chance to live out his childhood, never given the chance to clear his own name. The stain of injustice remains. His story serves as a reminder, not of how far we have come, but of how close we remain to the horrors of our past. In America's long history of racial injustice, how many other George Stinneys have we lost? How many names have gone unheard? And how many more must we fight for, so that their stories are not erased?